Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel. I'm your host, author, coach, and healer, Andy Grant. You can visit the Andy Grant to learn more about me. This is my first show back after an amazing trip to 4 countries in Africa, and I've shared some of the thrilling experiences on the Real Men Feel YouTube channel, bungee jumping, zip lining, sitting in Devil's Pool high above Victoria Falls. So if travel and thrill-seeking interest you, go check that out. In the meantime, Real Men Feel reminds men that they are human beings and that they have the right to experience and express all of their emotions. We have conversations that most men are not having, but that all men can benefit from. My guest today is Lux Vivens. Lux is a full-time healer, decadent health chef, artist, and ritual master with the Modern Mystery School. Her main passion right now is the Holy Magi clothing line, 100% of the proceeds of which go to funding the Austin Community Cares charity. Lux shares her views on masculinity and femininity, what men really want and need, and what women do that destroys the hearts of men. She sees it being socially illegal to be a man these days. Lux tells us one thing she wishes more men knew, and I don't believe I've had this answer before. Plus, she explores remothering, the illusions men put out, and more on service, purpose, and joy. Let's do it. Hello, Lux, and welcome to Real Men Feel. Late last year, you posted your opinion on men on Facebook, and it caught my eye and attention. And I asked you if you'd be willing to talk about that further here. And obviously, you said yes, because here you are.
Yes, I did. I'm not sure I would say it was my opinion on men in like a general term. It was more like a never-ending series of my view about the masculine and the feminine that I'm constantly spewing everywhere in real life and on social media, because I think it's the biggest problem that we're currently facing as a collective.
Cool. Well, let me read at least part of this and get everyone up to speed and on the same page. We can take it from there. Men, in my opinion, it's not how ripped you are or how much money you have or how many followers stumble behind you that makes you attractive. Those things as soul offerings magnetize you to broken or incubating, parentheses, young, damaged, traumatized women, but you cannot then complain that your poison bait caught poison fish. To a solid woman, that's all afterthought. What makes you burning hot to us is authenticity, emotional intelligence, keeping your word, publicly celebrating the women in your life, space holding ability, internal stability, meaning not getting easily triggered or defensive, and learning how to engage with sexuality in a way that achieves mutual transcendence. Because many of us were treated like human sex dolls the majority of our dating life, and very definitely not like goddesses and the literal portal between dimensions. What about that feels contrary to what most men think they should be putting out there into the world? That what they think makes them attractive?
Well, what most men are trying to achieve is an illusion of success so that the idea of the ideal woman will gravitate towards them. It's merit-based and it's performative. So it's if I have X amount of money in my bank account, if I'm driving such and such car, if I have the multi-million-dollar house on the hill is one version, or if I have X amount of followers on social media for the younger generations, whatever it is, or if I go to the gym 6 days a week and track my macros and I'm, busting out of my seams, then a woman who finds that to be the bar of male success will just show up. The problem with that is that, yes, that will magnetize you to a certain vibration, but the woman who's going to come just for that is not going to be what it is you're actually looking for. And that's going to be exciting for about 5 days to 2 years, depending on how smart you are.
Right.
And then you're going to be like, all right, so I've got this hot chick on my arm, but I still feel empty inside. Or I have this woman who comes from wealth on my arm, but I am completely numb. Or I have this person who I'm very attracted to, but there's no passion in the relationship. And then they get to the midlife crisis point and have to reevaluate everything instead of just from the get-go starting from the inside and doing the internal work and talking to women and having relationships with women that aren't just romantic, and then going, oh, okay, so a healthy, healed woman of value, of true value, who is leading in the spiritual wants me to lead in the physical. Who is this wants me to that. You fill in the puzzle first, and then you become the kind of man who that woman would want, not for her, for yourself. But then she shows up,
Right.
right?
So putting forward an illusion gets an illusion in return. Why do you think any man kind of shuns and buries their authenticity and puts on that show to begin with?
Because that's what they've been trained to do from the day that they were born. They're molded by their family and society and religion and empire, as we have come to call it, the forces that are trying to dehumanize all of us in various ways. They've been told that real men don't fill in the blank, real men do fill in the blank, but it's usually totally opposite. It's like the ability to navigate your emotions and express them and hold the container for the volcano that is the feminine capacity for emotion, which is greater than the masculines, is a superpower. And men have been basically neutered because it makes you easy to control. It sounds simplistic, but that's really the bottom line of why women and men are in the place that we're in now. Goes all the way back to the Roman Empire. It makes us easier to just feed off of. So a man who has the courage to say, I'm going to really dedicate time, energy, money, focus to what am I feeling now, and what are my trapped and blocked emotions that I have held on to, that have become, literal my literal prison that I'm living in. Release those, and then you can get to the point where you have a healthy emotional expression, which is 7 to 15 minutes, right? And then it's done. Not 20 years of that one time I said this, or she laughed at me for that, or whatever. Like, that's not a healthy landscape. But having emotions is the entire friggin' point of being human.
Right.
And it's how our souls talk to us. So if it's how our souls talk to us and men are told not to have them, what does that do to you spiritually? And that explains why there's so many more women, any spiritual environment you go into, almost any, not like Tibetan monks, but almost any spiritual environment you go into, it's 90% women. And it's because the men have been cut off from that. It's super intentional.
So did you grow up with men willing to be open, willing to do the inner work, and that's why you uncovered this, or is it your own experiences with that traditional male that made you a part of your awakening to this issue?
Grew up probably the same way other people did. I mean, I didn't grow up the average way in almost any other facet, but I had lots of men that were just doing what you're supposed to do, jumping through the hoops and doing the performative thing. So it wasn't that. It was really when I in well, right when I turned 30, I became like a sacred surrogate, which is kind of like a sugar baby, except your focus is the spiritual evolution of the person, not, sexual gratification. And there were actual relationships that just had a very strict boundary. And I lived with them a lot of times. I was in love several times, but my job was to basically awaken that dormant spiritual seed and give them permission to let go of all the bullshit and go, well, who am I? What do I actually want, if I take away all of the social expectations, I consider it like cult deprogramming. It's a very slow and methodical process, but these are very high income, career oriented men. A lot of them were like, the top 1% in the world as far as wealth goes. And they were miserable. They were the most miserable people I ever met, as they had everything that they were supposed to have. They had all of the trappings of success, and their insides were like just cavernous torment, just constant silent screaming. They were in hell. They were in their own hell, and breaking them out of that very slowly. And by doing that, which I did for the vast majority of that decade until about 5 years ago, I saw the pattern very, very, very clearly, because my sample size is huge. At this point, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of men in a healing capacity, and I've been able to talk to them in a space where their vulnerability is not only acceptable, it's encouraged. So I feel like I objectively understand men better than pretty much any woman, and more than a lot of men, right? Because I've talked to such a huge sample size, and they're all hurting in the same way, and they're all wanting the same thing, and they're all unfulfilled in the same way. And the message that they really want to get out, or that I really want to get out on their behalf, is women and men both have a lot of heavy lifting to fix this. The most immediate and simple ways that we can do our part as women is to start appreciating and expressing appreciation for men, all men, not just your husband or your boyfriend or your son or your boss or whatever. Every man you see in public, who expect them to open the door for you, expect the best for them, stop expecting the worst, start expecting the best, and you will start getting it. I guarantee it. When they open the door for you, say thank you, express gratitude. When they help you with some manual task, even if that's their job, express genuine appreciation and stop nagging. If there are things that they could be doing better, then we express that in a constructive criticism, two-way conversation. Here's how I'm showing up in the relationship. How can I better serve you? Here are my needs that are not being fulfilled. We do not nitpick. It's destroying the heart of a man when you nag, because it's the opposite of what feeds them. They want thank you. They want appreciation for what they do in the world and in the home.
I saw in your bio you called yourself a sensual alchemist. Is that surrogate role you're speaking of?
No, that was last lifetime. Sensual alchemy I came up with it based on that experience. But instead of being in relationships with people, I'm having, 1 hour sessions where most people show up because they think they are not satisfied with their sex life, either their own or with their wife or whatever. And I tell people, I'm very honest about the fact that it's a bait and switch. I say the bait is that there's something sexually that isn't being satisfied. But the switch is that once you get here, I'm going to show you how it really has nothing to do with sex and is entirely about your resistance to spiritual evolution and what the actual power behind sex is, which is the creation energy in our Hara chakras, which is just being wasted. And as a man, when you're constantly pursuing, dopamine and self-pleasuring and watching videos that are draining the life out of you all day, every day for years, you're creating creation energy, you're generating creation energy, and then you're wasting it. You're spilling your seed is draining your chi. So that's why men die faster. That's why they start losing their hair. That's why, yes, there's physical components, but everything physical starts in the spiritual, right? So like your hormones just deplete and everything, you start shriveling and drooping, and you just see like the life sucked out of a man who has been living in that way, versus you look at a man who has a healthy relationship with a woman who is supporting him and who is filling her feminine role and allowing him to fill his masculine role. And they're thriving. They look way younger than their age. They're glowing, they're willing to help everyone around them at all times. They're service oriented. They're healthy.
From all the men that you've worked with, and you said you knew what they wanted, and they all wanted the same thing and all the same kind of issues. So, what do you see that those men and all men want?
The core is they want to serve. They want to fulfill their purpose and they want to fulfill their mission on the planet. And everyone has an entirely different path. They get distracted by career being purpose, but that's just, matrix physical level reality. What is your soul's purpose is the North Star. And that's what they would like permission to do, which they don't feel they've been allowed to. Like, still to this day, it's a lot more socially acceptable, but you talk about spiritual stuff with men and they get very like, I don't want to be seen as like coloring outside of lines or believing in make believe or whatever it is. Let's talk about it in scientific terms. And I'm like, okay, we can talk about it in scientific terms because it's all the same thing. We can talk about it in terms of quantum physics if that makes you more comfortable. But really, we're still talking about your divine nature and your reconnection to that. That's the root level of what they want. The more surface level is the desire for appreciation for what they contribute to the world, which is a huge problem right now because I keep saying that it's illegal. It's socially illegal to be a man right now, especially a white man or a straight man or whatever. It's like if the message that you're getting every time you talk to someone or go out in the world or log on to your social media, if the message that you're being bombarded with all day every day is that you're invalid, that there's something wrong with you, that by the very way you were born, you're less than. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? It's like the things that we're all on the same page about, which is that you don't get to tell somebody that they're less than you for being gay, or you don't get to tell somebody that they're less than you for being a different race. We're mostly, other than, Nazis, we're mostly on the same page about that in 2025. And yet, how is it okay to tell men, which is, a way bigger percentage of the population than different races and different sexual orientations? How is it okay to tell them that they're the root of all evil, that they're the problem with everything, and that their voice, this isn't the time, just sit and listen. You've been in control for so long. Now it's time for you to just shut up and listen. Like, no, that's not, you don't fix something by replicating it. And this goes back to the oppressed will always mimic the oppressor. The people that feel like they haven't been appreciated or validated for the way that they were born are now doing the exact same thing, but it's currently okay to do it to men.
So, what do you see as the solution to this?
I think trying to figure out the solution from a big picture is what's distracting everybody from what's actually going to fix it, which is me, you. As an individual, I did used to expect the worst from men. And you can go into chicken or the egg, like there were things that happened that put me in that perspective. And all of the most horrific and traumatizing things that I've ever experienced in my life has been from the hands of a man. But when I was expecting the worse I got, the worst. And I was angry and I was like, don't talk to me when I was out in public. And I was getting harassed because I was like I was pre-clenching for some bullshit, and then I would get some bullshit. And then when I did a lot of internal healing, both on my own shadow work and receiving external healings, eventually I completely dropped all of that. All of the social conditioning, all of my biases from personal experiences, all of the things that I was being told to expect from other women on social media, right? Which we're training each other to expect the worst. I dropped all of that and started expecting the best. And that's what I get now. Everywhere I go, every man I interact with, whether it's a client or in public, they are so joyful to serve, even if it's just opening the door or even if it's helping me put down the truck so I can put something, put my groceries in or whatever. Just any little, they're so eager to do that. And then when I in turn am genuinely so appreciative, their faces just light up. Like you see the little boy who just wants to do his job and do it well.
Yeah.
And I think that changes their whole day, and then the next time they see a woman, they aren't going to have that, well, is it okay to open the door or not? You know, conversation. Like, is she going to be mad at me or like I'm insinuating that she can't open the door herself or any of those things? They're less likely and they're more likely to just do it. And then that causes a ripple effect. So I think the way that we fix it is by one, healing our own internal nonsense that is attracting the same level of person, so we graduate and then we take the time to talk to all of the people in our lives who are examples of whatever the thing is that we're working on. We have conversations with them and we really listen and we go, okay, so I'm not going to react. I'm not going to overlay my experience. I'm not going to filter your reality through my understanding of things. I'm going to be completely blank slate and allow you to express yourself. And then you can figure out what people want and need because they'll tell you. They'll straight up tell you.
There's a lot in there. And so it's interesting to me for the sake of Real Men Feel, the importance of service has been showing up for like the last 6 months in almost every conversation. And one thing I've often said is that nobody told me how joyful service felt to give that service about anything. And it's what you're talking about. Like growing up, a Boy Scout was supposed to help an old lady across the street with the groceries. So it just made it seem like a cliche and silly. But I find when I'm feeling at my worst, if I find a way to help someone else in big, small, and different, it always makes me feel better. And one of the greatest paths to uncovering my purpose has been via service. So it's like you're saying, so that purpose uncovered through service, is that at the core for everybody?
Yes, because that's what we're here to do. So when you're serving another person, you're serving a part of the collective one and you're closer to God. You're reconnecting in a microcosmic way to the all that is. And that's also why we crave romantic relationships. But you can get that from helping an old lady across the street. It makes you feel better because it makes you feel more godly. It's as simple as that. And the more you can stay in that ray of consciousness, the more joyful that you will be. And when you meet people that are high level mystery school initiates, which we're both affiliated with, that's the thing that they all have in common is they're just like beaming, they're just radiating joy so powerfully that it's almost concerning in the beginning when you don't know what you're looking at. Like I remember I've had a couple of crises of faith, which I think is normal when you're starting on the path because it's like such a completely different, you're breaking out of a whole system. But my second one, the thing that I pointed to that was like, this is why I'm right and that, I shouldn't be doing this and, I don't want to be involved with these people is the way that all the Divinas have the same smile. And I was like, it's like pod people, they're like Stepford wives or something. They all have the same smile. And I got over that. I got through that crisis of faith. But funnily enough, I was just at my second Kabbalah ascension a couple weekends ago, and there's a picture of me with my best friend that I'll send you, and we both have the same smile. The smile that I would always point to and be like, "There's something weird," like nobody's that happy. They've got to be pretending. And I was like, "Oh, the smile is true, authentic, completely uninterpreted through any human lens. It's just joy, is
Yeah.
what it is."
I have similar experiences for sure, and for me, the doubt's not only at the beginning of the path; it's showed up towards what's supposed to be the end of it, and towards the end of it too. But yeah, joy, you know, joy isn't something attributed to men very often, and even
Yeah.
that, like we're hungry, horny, angry. That's kind of the limit that men allow themselves and that they're told to allow themselves. But yeah, um, and so I've had people come. So I think, yeah, I used to teach like ebook classes and entrepreneurship for like small self-employed like psychics and mediums was my little niche, and people would come to see if I was really as happy as I seemed online, and they doubted that they came to see if I was real or not. And it was just so funny because I've major depression for years and years of my life, multiple suicide attempts. I'm like, have you not seen that part of my story? Like,
Right.
you think you can only be one or the other? Like, no, unfortunately, can be it all. But yeah, joy is infectious. Joy spreads. Um, I used to think when I was depressed as a kid, I thought happy people were fake. I thought depression was the reality of our world, and happy people were lying to themselves.
Well, most happy people are fake, but there's a huge difference between happiness and joy.
Yeah. And
Almost every happy person I've ever met I mean, they're all reacting to some external stimuli,
yeah.
but it's also it's a flash in the pan. It's a mask that you can only hold for so long before it starts cracking. And that's why a lot of people self isolate, is because they're like, if I'm only seen for 10 minutes here or an hour at this event, or I super curate my social media so my life seems different than it is, then nobody will see me and they won't notice the small little cracks around the smile and then the whole thing breaks apart. I've been helping a friend work through that for almost a year now, and he's still terrified for anybody to see him. And it's like the root of that is not understanding what joy is. So you're pursuing all of the external solutions, both in the sense of temporary emotions and in the sense of stimulation, whether it's food or sex drive or exercise or money or whatever it is. Just like, well, if I can, maybe this band-aid will work. Nope, maybe this band-aid will work. But you can't fill a God-shaped hole with anything but God.
Mm,
It's impossible. Doesn't
right.
matter. You can put the entire universe in that hole. It's not going to fill it. You know,
Yeah.
what they're afraid of is having to look at themselves, right? Because we're all mirrors. So if you're terrified of other people see you, what it actually means is that you're terrified to look at yourself. And the reason that you're terrified to look at yourself is because instinctively that means you'll have to process the concept of your divinity. And why is that terrifying? Because it means that you have a shitload of responsibility. It means that everything you think is important because it becomes a reality on some level, on some dimensional plane, everything that you do is important all day, every day, every second of your day. The quality of food that you put in your body, the quality of thought that you allow, the quality of words that you express. And that is terrifying. Like, even I have days where I'm like paralyzed. I'm in bed. I'm just like, I'm not feeling at my best. And I know the consequences of that. So I'm just going to like stay here on the blankets with my puppies until I feel better. Well, that's a huge thing to wrap your head around, especially if you are completely lost in the matrix and these concepts are totally foreign to you, you know? And that's why people don't want to be seen.
There's one term you mentioned the first time we spoke that I wanted to get back and get you. You talked about that one of the things you did was remothering, and I'd never heard of that
Mhm.
before. Can you expand on that?
Yes. So most women's core wound is daddy issues, and most men's core wound is mom issues, which is just kind of how we chose for the system to work. So a man's job is to make a woman feel safe, both physically and emotionally. It's his job to protect the goddess in the physical, right? But if he didn't have an example of unconditional nurturing love from his mother, then he doesn't know how to do that. That's where you learn it as a boy. Is you see the mother archetype, you interact with your own mother as a example of her, and then you have like a blueprint. And then when you're a man, you're able to kind of activate that blueprint. And that's allows you to care about all the women in your vicinity. It also allows you to have a deeply meaningful relationship with your partner. If you didn't have that, then you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing. And even if you try, you just don't have the skill set. And those men tend to have deeply problematic romantic relationships. They're usually married because you're supposed to do that. And they're not good husbands, and they're not being treated well by their wives because they're just reenacting this core wound. So what I do is you literally, man or woman, right? I specialized in men's healing for like 12 years, but I also treat women. So they, man or woman, they literally lie in my lap and I hold them like a baby. And I put my hand on their different chakras and I flow energy. And if it's a man, I very slowly start to open up the armor around his heart chakra, which you have to be really careful and go very slow with a man because otherwise they freak out. All of a sudden they're feeling, 40 years of emotions and they just like lose their shit. You just little tinkle here, little tinkle there. And then once they have felt pure unconditional love from a woman, it changes their entire lives. A lot of times after just one session.
Hmm.
And after 6 months or a year or whatever, so many people have told me, I'm a good husband now. I'm a good father now. I have good relationships with all of the women in my life, and I have good relationships with myself. Because if you never feel unconditional love, you're hurting 24/7 your whole life. Because you're feeling the separation from spirit in a meta sense, and you're also feeling that same separation in this human consciousness in this life. It's too much pain for one person to handle. That's too much, and that leads to bad behavior, addiction, you know monkey mind, anxiety, having to be on all kinds of prescription medications, porn addiction. It leads to lots of problems. If you can just basically put that missing piece where it goes, then the rest of it kind of like takes care of itself. It's my favorite type of healing to offer people. And I would say that it's probably my main specialty because I don't know a lot of people that can do it.
Hmm.
And my job is just to get out of the way and let Divine Mother come in and do her thing. Like, I'm very skilled, but my primary job is to get out of the way.
Right. Yeah. And that which takes a lot of skill to
Yeah.
recognize that, to be willing to not to think that this is me doing this cool thing. And yeah, got it.
Yeah. That's the
So
main challenge of being a skilled healer, I would say, is I get constant positive feedback all day, every day from people that are telling me that I've changed their lives. And I have to be like, no, you're healing yourself. I'm just very good at orchestrating the conditions that are allowing you to do that. And I don't struggle with a tendency towards ego very much because I've just done so much work to keep it in its little corner. But still, even me, every once in a while, I'll be like, wow, I'm really awesome, you know? So as a very skilled healer, sometimes you have to be like, okay, let's calm down.
with all your experience, personal and professional, with men, is there one thing that you wish more men knew?
One thing. Oh, geez. Okay, yeah, I would say I wish men understood that women don't understand them. So it's not that we're trying to be whatever your particular issue with women has been. It's that we don't know what you want and what you need, and men are not great at expressing that generally. And also on the flip side, men don't understand women and what they want and need. So it's not malicious the vast majority of the time. It's not that she's trying to undercut you or undermine you or not be supportive or not be appreciative enough or whatever. She's just her reality is completely different. And we all make the mistake of assuming everyone is like us, whether that's men or women or personality types or astrological signs or whatever. You expect other people to be operating in the same system. And the more you can realize that that's not the case, that everybody you meet is completely individual and how they're seeing the world is not at all the same as you. Like whenever I find myself falling into this trap, I remind myself that there no two people see the sky as the same color. 8 billion people on the planet. There's not two of us that see the same color. That's mind-boggling, right?
Mm.
So talk to the people in your life who are important to you, friends, family, significant others, whatever. Even if it's a same-sex relationship. Yeah, you're both men, but you know, you're different. Sit them down and have a very clear conversation from a place of stillness, not from a place of reactivity. So if you need to schedule it, I always give my partners ample time. I'm like, "Hey, I would like to have a chat with you at 8 p.m." So that gives you, you know, X amount of hours to prepare. And I'm letting you know it's not a bad thing. So you don't spend that whole time nervous. There's no major problem that we're addressing. Just have some things that I'd like to communicate about. Give people notice, allow them to emotionally prepare. And then when you're in the conversation, just be like, here's where I'm at, here's what I want and need, and then allow them to give you feedback because maybe what you currently think that you want or need is coming from a place of wounding or defensiveness or you haven't processed through something all the way or whatever. So allow them to say, "Well, okay, I hear you, but from my perspective, this is what I see and you do have a tendency to do this and that, not in a judgmental way, just I've noticed you struggle with this thing." And then if they can't live up to their end of the relationship. If you're doing all of this and you're being very clear and you're telling people, even if it's your mother, right? You're telling people, here's what I want, here's what I need, here's my standard of interaction. And also, what do you need? How can I better serve you? If they're not willing to meet you there repeatedly over an extended period of time, then you move on. Doesn't matter who it is. Then
Yeah.
you move on. Don't allow yourself to keep getting beat up. And that's something I see so many married men do is they're coming to me week after week explaining how they're being just beat to shit by their wives. And some of my greatest successes, in my opinion, as a healer have been when I've allowed people to get to the point where they're willing to get a divorce,
Yeah.
because I'm like, she's broken in her own way, and you guys were at the same level when you met. You were at the same level of trauma and codependency and whatever, and you wanted it because you attracted it. But now you're growing and she's not growing with you. And in fact, she is defying your invitation to grow. That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
There's nothing further you can do unless you physically drag her, right? If people want to sit down and have a little tantrum about staying in their limitations, keep walking. Let them have their little tantrum. Somebody else will come along who is at the level that they're at now, and they'll have a little toxic tango, and maybe the person will choose to change eventually, or maybe they won't, but that's not your responsibility.
So, Lux, what's the best way for people to find out everything that you're up to, and also with your charity work too?
I am a bit of a whirlwind of activity. I'm in a constant state of flux, as you said. The healing website is holisticmagician.com, which is MAGICKIAN. My clothing line, which is like mythical, magical clothing, is HOLIMAGI.com, holymagi.com. All the proceeds from that and all the proceeds from my decadent health meals and desserts and holistic beauty products and everything, all 100% of profits go to support Austin Community Care, which was formerly We Are Love for 7 years. We literally just changed the name. And right now we're focusing on, and we're transitioning away from doing boots on the ground weekly distributions to the homeless downtown and in encampments, because I just got burned out and I felt like I wasn't actually making much of a difference. It was just a Band-Aid. So now we're transitioning to fundraising for some kind of a structure, like a insulated shed or a converted bus or something like that, which can host a free store with supplies for kids of parents who are either living below the poverty line or on the streets. So the parents will be able to come and just take diapers or formula or whatever it is they need. And I feel like that's a better use of my time and energy. So that's just awesomeCommunityCare.com.
Yeah,
and then I'm either Lux Vivens or Cosmetera on most social media. I have many names and many facets. I'm a Gemini.
Cool. I had a high expectation of you being fascinating and intriguing, and since we opened with expectations, I'm like, yeah, my expectations were met and exceeded. So thank you. You are, man, you are such an icon of being of service in so many levels. Whether through the mystery school, through your charity work, it seems like it's just you are a service machine at times, and it's very impressive.
Definitely try.
Cool. Well, you're doing more than trying. You're doing it. Listen to Yoda.
Right.
So I want to thank you again for joining us today. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Please visit realmenfeel.org and see the blog post for this episode, which will have all the various links and resources discussed. Plus, I'll post in its entirety Lux's original Facebook post that got my attention. Wherever you're discovering Real Men Feel, please subscribe, follow, like, share this with someone, post a review or a comment. If you're not sure where you're going, it's really hard to get there. So I invite you to book a clarity call with me. It's complimentary. We'll explore where you want to go in your life, what's in the way, and what you can do about it. Visit theandygrant.com and claim your spot. Until next time, be good to yourself.